Okay, you're probably, every one of you are wondering why you are here. It took a long time for me to establish when I want to begin working in a woodlot. And generally, we were taught that we should wait until the trees have expressed dominance before you do releasing or thinning. But the problem that I run into with that is that by the time many trees that are of desirable character have expressed dominance, well, that doesn't work. They're dead. Oh. Okay. All right. In a stand like this, there are tremendous numbers of oak, and we want to make this, we want to retain this as an oak stand. So basically we would retain the aspen and the oaks, and we don't always see them. Here, for example, here's an oak. There's a really nice oak there that Dick is leaning on, and yeah, he would pick the best one.
It's holding them up, that's why.
Yeah. Okay. Those trees, that oak is going to make it to a dominant position. But what often happens with trees, with even the oak trees that are not as vigorous as red oak, for example, white oak, we were able to release in this stand, I don't have any right here to show you, but we were able to release within this stand hundreds of white oaks. But the white oaks at this age are only about head high. So there's no chance for white oak to survive in this kind of density. So the first work that was done here was to try to minimize those trees that had no possibility of doing anything good but had great potential for doing bad. An example would be this. Do you see this clump of soft maple over here? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 stems of red maple coming from a stump. This was clear cut. This is the result of a clear cut. And those 12 stumps are going to become worse than this.
Right.
Okay? Now, when we're looking at the long-term management of a property, we don't want to create this. Sometimes we have to evaluate how much time we want to devote to preventing it from happening. But consider, for example, it didn't take too long to cut off this clump of soft maple. And that released a number of trees around it. And some of you, probably all of you, detected that I've just lied to you. But you're so polite, you didn't point it out. But anyway, the point is, here is a typical example of a white oak.
Not making it.
In this, it's dead. It's dead. All right, and that this could be and will be white oak will be about 10% of this stand eventually. But that one won't be.
Bruce, can I ask the question? How many years ago was it a clear cut?
20 years.
And was it a real clear cut or
Not that long.
Yeah, yes, it was, they left some hemlock, they left a few bigger trees. In some areas they didn't go into, so there'd be patches of, but what you're looking at right here is 20 years of recovery from a clear cut, and only the very initial work has been done through here now. But it will pay great dividends. Removing that, there would be two ways that we could treat that group of 12 stems of red maple. We could keep the very best one and cut out 11 of them.
Yep.
But we don't have to do it here because we have so many other trees to work with. And our purpose for starting early in here was to be sure to release some oak. And we can get about 25% of this stand as red oak. And you'll see more of that. The next stop, we're looking at a little bit more, not more time from the clear cut, but more influence from the natural seed source, which was just across the path that we'll be driving on. And there's a lot of subtle things that are happening in the woodlot. So is this thinned enough to produce the forest that we want? Probably not. But we have released enough stems that we will have dominant red oak throughout this stand if we did nothing else. And the neat thing about this is that this work could be done with a minimal amount of effort. It takes a lot of work to cut a tree like this and get this down.
Right.
But if we start early enough, we can actually begin to release things, and you actually feel good about that because you walk past, I mean, every time I walk past something like that, you know, I mean, I don't have to curse it, I just, you know. But there was no future for that, and now there's a future for the forest. And we're not looking just at an individual tree, but we're looking at changing this whole forest. And that has to start very early on, especially if you are looking at certain species that may be there. Another observation that's kind of interesting is that from the clear cut, we had, let's say we have 20 years from the clear cut. Immediately after the clear cut, we have stump sprouts, especially from soft maple. The deer like it, it's wonderful, all that kind of thing, except that we end up with these clumps of soft maple all through the forest with the potential of them becoming the dominant tree. And that's what we want to avoid. All right. About 4 years from the clear cut, seedlings begin to appear. We usually evaluate the effectiveness of our forest cutting about 2 years before it means anything. But that, you know, makes you feel good. But anyway, seedlings seedlings are not going to be that evident until 4 years after the cut. Yes.
Bruce, we had white pine, white pine, clear cut. Is that all that's going to come back?
No, the pine will not come back. No. What will come back most likely will be aspen. You have a few patches of aspen because that has to go all the way back to succession, early succession, to recover that field or that forest.
Yeah.
One of the very interesting situations when it's helpful to think a little bit about when settlers came to this country. It was all forest, and forest was really the enemy. I mean, there were Indians behind the trees and places to hide and all kinds of animals, and it was a problem. So clearing the forest was that was an urgency. Well, over time we have a different view of the forest, but those cleared fields, many of them remain non-forested for 200 years. In that time, the forest conditions, the forest soils, the fungi that's growing within the forest soils and so on, that all died off. So when we have a field that is, we expect it to grow back to be a forest, it can't just become a forest overnight. It has to go through a process that we call succession. And that's why in here you'll see lots of aspen. We have not made any effort to remove all the aspen. We will diminish that over time, but aspen is one of the pioneer trees. What makes a tree a pioneer tree? It has the ability to grow without requiring soil fungi, the mycorrhizae. Aspen is a non-obligatory mycorrhizally viable tree. Okay, let's all say that together.
It's like willow trees.
Love it when you talk dirty like that.
Even if you don't want
Well, when as the aspen grow up in this field, the older aspen begin to incorporate mycorrhizae into their growth. But as a young tree, no. But it becomes, and then as that happens, they are building this soil fungus again. And when that happens, then other trees like red maples will come in under the shade of the aspen. But it's not just the shade of the aspen, it's the soil fungus. And the forest is beginning to start anew from that field. And it is exciting to see how that happens. So when I'm looking at this young forest that is recovering, I want all of that to work together. And so what we have created here, like this to me is very pleasant, but I expect Ed is going to be cutting this again. He will be releasing more trees, but every time it will be, we will find the tree that we want to favor and release it. In a stand like this, we have to be looking for what we want to work for. And that's the difference between releasing and thinning. Thinning doesn't matter which trees you take. You're just reducing the density. Thinning is most appropriate in conifer stands. Does it really matter whether you take this row or this row or this row? No, it doesn't. But in here, we can't thin properly in that manner. So we release them. We choose the tree that we want. That oak tree, I want to see, mostly because I want to live forever, but I want to see that as a big oak tree. And we can do that. But releasing is what does that. Any questions? I probably have confused.
So you're going to cut all these little trees around that? So
No need. No need. All I care about is that tree, it has a full crown, and it will do part of its work. See, part of the success of being a successful consultant, is that you just let the forest do its own thing, and then you take credit for it. That's all I'm doing. I just want that tree to do its very best, and it will do better. See, because there probably was a tree. Ed came in and cleaned up around it so that we could walk in here, but there probably was a tree cut near that, and you will see that later on. But what we want are trees of good form, good species. All of this other stuff is just support for that tree.
Okay, can I ask a question? Another one?
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry. So, like, for instance, I have a farm, 2 acres of farmland that's being taken over by poplar and maple.
Right.
And I like maple syrup myself, Right. And so, so if I don't want the poplar, then I would cut out the poplar. But if the poplar is needed to keep the maple stronger, then I need to know that. The other thing is that it's a field, so they're all like this, the same width, every single one of them, but they're right next to each other. And so that's where your thinning comes in, right? Because it's all the same tree. It's all maples.
It's as Ed will say in his signage, it's all about releasing. All right. So even if you have trees of that size and they're all that size,
Oh, yeah.
what you have to do is look for which ones are best. All right. Now this is what you look for. Trees that are generally the biggest diameter are the ones you gravitate to, but unfortunately they're bigger diameter because they're forked and they have more branches and more leaves, so they're growing faster. So if you're going to take a young stand, make sure that the ones you take out, the maples that you take out, are going to be the ones that are forked. Okay, so you're having really nice stems. Then with the situation that you're describing, where the trees are coming from a seed source and they're moving out,
It's all farmland.
it's
So
all right.
It was not clear cut. It was like all plowed in.
Right.
There's no stumps or nothing.
Okay, all right. My guess is that you need a certain amount of high density of something in that stand. So I would remove aspen that was competing or close to a maple that I want to keep, but I would not remove more than 1/3 of the aspen trees at a time. All right, take them all. That doesn't mean cut the third of the top off. And
Let me just add something to that.
We have a 10-acre parcel And before Bruce, we had a forester, and he told me to go in there and cut all the aspen out. So what happened is I went in there, cut all the aspen out, which was a lot of work. The white pine was left. And what happened, invasives took over. You cannot walk into that stand now. That's how thick it is with invasives. That was a wrong decision to make. You should never have done that.
Yeah.
But we're stuck with it. That's why we got to fill it like Bruce. Who
Good point.
who
If you
managed
open it
it.
up too quick, you're gonna
But
allow
10 acres of
unwanted
room land.
understory to come
Oh,
in.
I see, yeah.
Yeah.
You wanna
Take
keep
the
it
ones out that are
released
competing
but
with
shaded.
your best
And
keepers.
one of the considerations when we think about invasives, and we should consider invasives when we're doing forest work, invasives are at the early end of succession. They're the beginning of succession. So when you are interrupting in a major way, like going through and cutting out all the aspen, there's only two things that can happen naturally. One is that the aspens sprout quickly and are able to maintain it as a forest, or earlier succession plants are going to come in, and that's where your invasives get established.